My name is Maya Thompson. I'm 25 years old, and this is the story of how I learned that some people will do anything to climb the social ladder, even if it means stepping on the people who built their foundation. Please subscribe our channel and left comments below. It was the evening before Jake's graduation party, a time that should have been filled with celebration and family togetherness. Normally, our dinner table hosted simple fare like spaghetti with marinara sauce or frozen pizza from the grocery store's bargain section. These were the meals our working-class family could afford on a regular basis. But tonight was different. Tonight was meant to honor Jake's impending graduation from one of America's most prestigious medical schools, celebrating our family's achievement of producing a real doctor. My mother, Sarah, had ventured into the upscale section of the supermarket for the first time in months, returning with prime-grade roast beef, a bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon, and fresh seasonal vegetables that must have cost more than our usual weekly grocery budget. The dining room had been transformed for the occasion. She had dimmed the overhead lights to create a warm, intimate atmosphere, and our rarely used crystal glasses caught the light like tiny prisms. This scene was almost foreign in our modest household. Jake occupied the seat at the head of our dining table, the chair that had once belonged to our late father. He wore what was obviously a custom-tailored Brooks Brothers navy suit, and he swirled his wine glass with practiced elegance, as if he had been born into this kind of sophistication. Under the soft dining room lighting, he looked every inch the distinguished professional he was about to become. His skin was pale and unblemished, his fingers long and immaculate, showing no trace of the manual labor that had funded his education. The rich aroma of the roasting beef filled every corner of the dining room, creating an atmosphere of warmth and abundance. But despite the carefully orchestrated elegance of the evening, I felt as if I were sitting in a pool of ice water. Something in Jake's demeanor, something in the way he avoided making direct eye contact with me while maintaining that perfect smile, told me this dinner was leading somewhere I wouldn't want to go. About tomorrow's party, Jake finally spoke, setting down his wine glass with deliberate precision. Actually, that's exactly what we wanted to discuss with you tonight. My mother, Sarah, immediately set down her fork, her eyes beginning to dart nervously around the room, unable to meet my gaze directly. I recognized that look all too well. It was the same expression she wore whenever she was about to deliver news she knew would hurt me. It was a signal I had learned to read over the years, a warning that something unpleasant was coming my way. "Maya," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, so quiet I had to strain to hear her words. "Tomorrow's graduation celebration dinner is being held at the Oakwood Country Club." My stomach began to tighten into a familiar knot of anxiety. What had I done to prepare for tomorrow's party? I had worked 3 consecutive overnight shifts at Acme Concrete Company, earning double overtime pay. In the bitter cold of Chicago's winter, with temperatures dropping to 23 degrees Fahrenheit, I had hauled 400 bags of cement, each weighing 80 pounds. I had spent $500 of my hard-earned money, equivalent to 2 full weeks of wages, on an elegant emerald silk dress that now hung on my closet door like a banner from another world, representing hope and dreams I had harbored about finally being included in my brother's success. "Why wouldn't I fit in?" I asked, my voice unnaturally calm. Too calm, perhaps, like the eerie stillness that precedes a devastating storm. "It's the top tier of medical school society," Jake replied, not even bothering to look up at me as he continued methodically cutting his prime beef with his silver knife. "The attendees will be university professors, department heads, renowned physicians, and future colleagues who will become top-tier surgeons. The conversations will revolve around cutting-edge medical research, golf handicaps, and private yacht specifications, and you." His gaze slowly traveled across my hands, which were resting on the white tablecloth. Those hands told the story of 7 years of back-breaking labor. They were cracked and peeling from constant exposure to the alkaline concrete, with black grime permanently embedded under the fingernails that no amount of scrubbing could remove. They were covered with calluses and tiny scars from countless minor injuries sustained on construction sites. You don't even know the proper way to hold a champagne flute. Your accent, your entire presence, is too construction site. You would embarrass me in front of people whose opinions matter for my career. The air in the dining room seemed to crystallize at that moment, becoming so thick and heavy that breathing felt difficult. I turned my gaze toward my mother, searching for some sign of support or protest. This was the same woman who, 7 years earlier, had sat on our living room floor holding me while tears streamed down her face, thanking me for saving our family from financial ruin. This was the woman who had once called me the hero of our household, who had promised that my sacrifices would never be forgotten. "Jake is only thinking of what's best for you, sweetheart," my mother said hastily, simultaneously placing another generous portion of the expensive beef on Jake's plate, as if this gesture of maternal devotion could somehow soften the blow of what she was saying. "You would feel uncomfortable in that kind of high-end social setting anyway. Besides, you wouldn't understand the medical discussions, so you would just be standing there awkwardly. It would be much better if you stayed home and used the time productively. Perhaps you could thoroughly clean out the garage. Jake will be moving back home soon and will need space to store all his belongings from medical school." I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears like a drum. When I finally spoke, my voice sounded strangely detached, so calm and controlled that it seemed to belong to someone else entirely. "So I'm not worthy of attending my own brother's graduation party, but I am worthy of being your unpaid cleaning lady, organizing your garage storage?" "Don't make it sound so harsh," Jake said, frowning as if he were the one being unfairly treated. "I never said anything about severing our family relationship. It's simply that in this type of elite social environment, we need to maintain a certain image and standard. Perhaps once you find more respectable employment in the future, you'll have opportunities to attend these kinds of gatherings." Respectable. The word hit me like a physical blow, cutting through my chest like a sharp blade. I slowly rose from my chair, my movements deliberate and controlled. "I need to go upstairs and get something," I said quietly. Several minutes later, I returned carrying an elegantly wrapped black gift box. The packaging was clearly expensive, Italian handcrafted leather with deep crimson silk ribbon, and it had a substantial weight to it that suggested something significant was contained within. "What's this?" Jake's eyes immediately lit up with that familiar expression of greedy anticipation. "New car keys? I knew you would prepare something special to surprise me." "Very special indeed," I replied, placing the black gift box in the center of our dining table. I rested my fingers lightly on the lid while watching the expectant expressions on both his and my mother's faces. This isn't just a graduation gift, it's a complete summary of everything that has transpired over the past 7 years. Jake eagerly reached forward, ready to tear open the elegant wrapping. "Wait," I said softly, gently restraining his hand while maintaining a mysterious smile. "Since I'm apparently not worthy of appearing at that prestigious party, perhaps this gift should be opened tomorrow at the peak moment of the celebration. That should be your moment of ultimate triumph, Jake. This gift will ensure that everyone present will remember your name forever. I guarantee it." Jake slowly withdrew his hand, his face showing satisfied anticipation. He even turned excitedly toward our mother, like a child who had just been promised a special treat. "You see?" he said to her with obvious pleasure. "Maya may not have received a higher education, but she certainly has a talent for understanding how to please people and show proper respect. He called me Maya now, no longer sister, only because he expected a gift, only because he assumed I would continue to be manipulated and controlled by his expectations. I watched quietly as his handsome but increasingly hollow face turned toward our mother with that familiar expression of smug satisfaction. I felt the last vestige of familial warmth in my heart extinguish completely with those words. The little boy who had once cried and said, "I am nothing without you," was completely dead. In his place sat a cold-blooded, selfish, ungrateful stranger. "Enjoy tonight's feast to the fullest, Jake," I said softly, my voice carrying undertones they couldn't begin to understand. "Tomorrow will be the most unforgettable day of your entire life. I promise you that." That night, I didn't return to the dining table. Instead, I went upstairs to my small attic bedroom, closed the door, and sat in darkness for a long time. My lower back ached with that familiar, constant pain that had become my daily companion after 7 years of manual labor. 7 years, 7 complete years of my life. For this moment, to be able to stand proudly beside my brother and share in his success, I had inhaled concrete dust for 7 years, endured 7 years of physical and emotional humiliation on construction sites across Chicago. I turned on my bedside lamp and pulled out a locked metal security box from under my bed. Inside weren't jewelry or cash or any romantic mementos. The box contained evidence. 450 bank transfer receipts arranged in perfect chronological order. 4 handwritten promissory notes from Jake, each bearing his signature. 15 recorded phone conversations between us about money, each one clearly capturing him saying, "I will definitely pay you back, Maya. You are my most important creditor." There was also a document stamped by both an attorney and a notary public, detailing my legal standing regarding these financial arrangements. After 7 years in construction, I had learned one crucial lesson. Even with blood relatives, financial matters require clear documentation and legal protection. Especially when I began to notice Jake's attitude shifting, I had quietly begun consulting with attorneys to protect my interests. I dialed the phone number for Nathan Goldberg. Nathan was a former Wall Street attorney I had met at a construction site. He had been forced to leave his lucrative corporate practice after exposing a major investment bank's fraudulent activities, making enemies among Wall Street's elite in the process. Now he specialized in representing blue-collar workers in legal disputes, particularly against wealthy defendants who assumed working-class people couldn't afford quality legal representation. He was a genuine legal shark who took particular pleasure in dismantling privileged individuals who tried to take advantage of working people. "Maya?" Nathan's voice was sharp and alert despite the late hour. "Are you certain you want to activate this plan? Once we begin, there will be no possibility of turning back. Your family relationships will be completely destroyed." I stared at my reflection in the dark window, a pale, exhausted woman who was only 25 years old but already carried the physical scars of someone much older. "Nathan," I said firmly, "initiate all procedures. Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock sharp, I want the court to approve the asset preservation order." "Understood. They didn't open that gift box early, did they?" "No. They think it contains some expensive surprise." "Indeed it does." Nathan chuckled quietly on the other end of the line, the satisfied sound of a predator who had successfully cornered its prey. "It's a nuclear-level surprise." The next morning arrived with brilliant sunshine streaming through my small bedroom window. It was a beautiful Saturday morning in late spring. My mother and Jake had left early after carefully preparing their appearances for the day. Sarah wore her finest Chanel suit, while Jake donned that custom Italian suit that probably cost more than I earned in a month. They hadn't even bothered to wake me, leaving only a note attached to the refrigerator with a magnet. Remember to thoroughly clean the garage and make space for Jake's belongings. Love, Mom. I slowly tore that note into small pieces, dropping each fragment into the trash can, just as I had torn up my college acceptance letter 7 years earlier. At exactly 10 o'clock in the morning, I received a text message from Nathan. Cook County Judge has signed all documents. Asset preservation order and debt enforcement order are now officially in effect. Court officers and enforcement personnel are en route to the location. I brewed myself a cup of rich coffee, adding 2 spoonfuls of sugar and cream, then settled into our empty living room to enjoy this rare moment of peaceful solitude. This house, a 3-bedroom, 2-story home with front and back gardens and a 2-car garage, was considered upper middle class in our neighborhood. 7 years ago, after our father died suddenly from a heart attack, his life insurance had provided just enough for a down payment. However, because my mother's credit history was absolutely terrible, no bank would approve her for a mortgage. Eventually, the loan was secured using my 18-year-old pristine credit record for a 30-year mortgage. For the past 7 years, the monthly payment of $2,800 had been automatically deducted from my paycheck. In the eyes of my mother and Jake, this was their home. But according to legal documents, this was my private property, and they were simply tenants who had never paid rent. I opened my laptop and logged into Facebook to watch Jake's live stream from the graduation celebration. The video showed the most expensive and exclusive country club in our city. Annual membership fees alone cost $50,000, and prospective members needed recommendations from at least 3 existing members just to be considered for admission. The perfectly manicured lawns looked like green carpets, with professionally dressed waiters in formal attire carrying silver trays as they moved gracefully among the guests. Under enormous white tents, countless round tables covered with pristine white linens were decorated with expensive fresh flowers and crystal stemware. Jake stood at the center of the crowd, elegantly holding a crystal champagne flute, surrounded by a circle of young women wearing designer evening gowns and distinguished older men who were obviously medical school professors and renowned physicians. He smiled with such confidence, such charm, such perfect composure. My mother stood not far from him, wearing that expensive suit, proudly accepting congratulations and compliments from other guests about her accomplished son. "Oh, this mysterious gift?" Jake pointed to a decorated table where my black gift box sat prominently displayed. Speaking directly to his phone's camera, he winked with that practiced, perfect smile he had rehearsed countless times. "This is a special present from my sister, Maya. Although she couldn't be here today due to work obligations, she told me this is the most precious and meaningful gift of the entire celebration." Polite applause and expectant murmurs rippled through the crowd of well-dressed guests who were obviously intrigued by this mysterious package. "Open it! Open it! Let us see what surprise awaits!" someone began chanting, and others quickly joined in. I felt my pulse quicken, but this wasn't nervousness or fear. This was the exhilaration of a hunter about to capture their prey after a long, patient pursuit. In the video stream, Jake began slowly untying the deep crimson silk ribbon with theatrical flair, clearly enjoying being the center of attention. If I could freeze time forever, I would choose the exact moment when Jake lifted the lid of that gift box. In that single second, his face still displayed anticipation and excitement, while the surrounding guests continued smiling as they waited for the surprise to be revealed. Then his smile completely froze on his face. The box contained no Rolex watch, no new car keys, no expensive medical equipment, no cash or checks. Inside the elegant package was only a thick stack of legal documents bound together with metal clips. The top document was printed in oversized red lettering, designed to be clearly visible to everyone present. With visibly trembling hands, Jake picked up the first document. The camera zoomed in, clearly showing Nathan's strategically enlarged font. Debt collection notice. Creditor, Maya Elizabeth Thompson. Debtor, Jacob Michael Thompson. Principal debt amount, $450,000. Educational and living expenses. Accrued interest, $177,000, calculated at federal standard interest rate over 7 years. Total debt, $627,000. Jake's hands began shaking noticeably. The previously festive atmosphere around him suddenly became silent as all the guests craned their necks with curiosity, trying to read the document's contents for themselves. He picked up the second document, his complexion becoming even more ashen. Joint Liability Guarantee Enforcement Notice. Guarantor, Sarah Marie Thompson. Note, based on guarantor's legal responsibility as co-signer, if primary debtor cannot repay, guarantor must assume joint liability for full repayment. What kind of cruel joke is this? Jake's voice came through the live stream audio with obvious panic and vocal strain. This has to be some kind of terrible mistake. At that crucial moment, commotion and shouting could be heard from outside the video frame. Excuse me, which one of you gentlemen is Jacob Thompson? The camera shook violently, then turned toward the country club's main entrance. 3 law enforcement officers in formal uniforms, wearing prominent badges, strode purposefully into the tent, followed by a heavily built tow truck operator. All the guests' attention immediately shifted to these unexpected intruders. The elegant champagne reception had suddenly transformed into a legal enforcement scene. "I am an officer with the Cook County Court Enforcement Division," announced the lead official in a voice loud and cold enough for every person under the tent to hear clearly. According to an asset preservation order that became effective this morning due to Jacob Thompson's significant debt default risk and suspected malicious debt evasion, we are hereby legally seizing the 2024 Porsche Cayenne SUV registered in his name. That was the brand new luxury vehicle Jake had picked up from the dealership just last week, using $15,000 from my credit line as a down payment. At the time, he had promised that the first month's salary after graduation would be used to pay you back completely. "What are you people doing? This is my graduation party. You have no authority to conduct enforcement here." Jake began screaming hysterically, his 7 years of medical school cultivation of elite composure instantly crumbling to reveal the panic and desperation beneath. "The keys, sir." The enforcement officer extended his gloved hand without mercy. "Hand over the car keys immediately, or we will arrest you on charges of obstruction of justice and resisting law enforcement." The entire gathering fell into deathly silence. Those professors, doctors, and classmates who had been laughing and toasting with Jake just minutes earlier now backed away from him as if avoiding a contagious disease. Whispered conversations began spreading through the crowd like wildfire. My God, tracked down by court officers at his own graduation party? He owes his sister over $600,000. His sister who works construction. She earned his tuition money by hauling concrete, and he wouldn't let her attend his graduation celebration? How could someone like this become a doctor? Where are his medical ethics? How did Harvard Medical School admit a student with such character flaws? My mother, Sarah, rushed forward frantically, trying to interfere with the law enforcement. "You cannot treat my son this way. This is a misunderstanding." It must be that crazy girl Maya causing trouble. She has mental problems. Ma'am, step back immediately, or we will arrest you on charges of interfering with official duties and assaulting law enforcement officers." The officer responded without sympathy, his hand already moving toward the handcuffs on his belt. Jake's face turned the color of liver as he stood before hundreds of eyes filled with disdain and curiosity, in front of the very high society elite he had desperately wanted to impress. With hands shaking so badly he could barely hold anything steady, he slowly pulled out the Porsche keys from his pocket. The live stream signal abruptly cut off at that moment. But I knew this was only the beginning. This was merely the appetizer. That evening at 7:30, my phone began ringing frantically. The caller identification showed my mother's number. I slowly answered the call and put it on speaker, continuing to leisurely sip my third cup of coffee of the day. "Maya, you crazy person, you have completely lost your mind. Do you realize what you've done? Jake's reputation has been completely destroyed. He's crying like a baby. You call that damn lawyer immediately and withdraw all these legal proceedings. Do you hear me? Mother." I interrupted her hysterical screaming with a voice so calm it was genuinely unsettling. "Are you two on your way home right now?" "Of course. I'm coming home to teach you a lesson, you ungrateful brat. I'm going to tear up your—" "Then you had better hurry," I said, glancing at the antique wall clock. "Because the locksmith who is changing all the door locks will be here in 8 minutes. And I've already very thoughtfully packed all your personal belongings for you. Everything is neatly arranged on the front porch." Absolute silence fell on the other end of the phone. What are you talking about?" My mother's voice began trembling. "I'm speaking very clearly, Mother." I pronounced each word distinctly, savoring the satisfaction each syllable brought. "The down payment for this house came from my savings. The mortgage has been paid by my income, and the property deed lists only my name. Given the extreme disrespect you both showed me today, and Jacob's obvious lack of any intention or ability to repay his debts, I have decided to reclaim my private property usage rights. You are now officially evicted from my house." "How can you be so cruel? We're family. Maya, blood is thicker than water. How can you treat your own relatives so viciously?" "Family?" I laughed, though tears were streaming down my face. But these weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of liberation. "Were we family when you were eating prime roast beef while I was surviving on instant noodles? Were we family when you were riding in the luxury car I bought with my blood and sweat while I waited for buses in the rain? Were we still family last night when you told me I wasn't worthy of sitting at your dinner table?" I took a deep breath, feeling 7 years of suppressed anger finally finding its outlet. "No, Sarah, we are not family. I am a creditor, and you are debtors. I am a landlord, and you are tenants being evicted. This is our true relationship now, and it will remain our relationship forevermore." I hung up the phone. That night, every neighbor in the Maplewood community witnessed a dramatic spectacle unfolding on their quiet suburban street. The once successful Jacob Thompson, fresh graduate of Harvard Medical School, and his perpetually proud mother, Sarah, who had always boasted about her son's achievements, stood under the yellow glow of streetlights, surrounded by several battered suitcases and plastic bags containing their possessions. They couldn't enter the house because all the locks had been changed. They couldn't drive away because their car had been impounded by the court. They couldn't even call a taxi because Jake's credit cards were all frozen and Sarah's purse contained less than $50 in cash. Jake pounded frantically on the front door, his pleas evolving from angry curses to desperate begging and finally to hopeless sobbing. "Maya, please, I was wrong. I truly realize I was wrong. Maya, I'm your brother. Please open the door. I have to report to the hospital tomorrow morning. I cannot be homeless. I cannot let the hospital administration know I have nowhere to live. Please, I'm begging you." I sat on the window seat in my second-floor master bedroom, holding that cup of coffee that had long since grown cold, quietly observing through the curtains the two pathetic figures below. In that moment, I felt neither the triumphant satisfaction of successful revenge nor any guilt or regret about my actions. I experienced only a profound sense of relief, as if an enormous burden that had been crushing my back for 7 years, a parasite that had been feeding on my very soul, had finally been successfully removed. I did not go downstairs to open the door, and I would never again open any door for them. 3 months later, during the golden days of autumn, I sat in the sunroom of my new home, a modern townhouse located in the city's prestigious North District, holding that day's edition of the Chicago Tribune. My new residence featured 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, a spacious gourmet kitchen, and a deck overlooking Lake Michigan. More importantly, this place held no painful memories whatsoever. Nathan had truly proven himself to be a brilliant attorney. At that negotiation table, facing the very real possibility of having his medical license revoked by the Illinois Medical Board for academic fraud, malicious debt default, and moral character deficiencies, Jake had ultimately signed every agreement document we had prepared. To preserve his medical credentials and professional future, he was required to fulfill 2 conditions. First, he signed a mandatory 25-year repayment agreement. $2,500 would be automatically deducted from his monthly salary and transferred directly to my designated bank account. This amount perfectly covered my new house mortgage payments, with some remaining for my living expenses. The second condition, which provided me with the most satisfaction, was what I held in my hands, that day's Chicago Tribune. On page 3 of the newspaper, occupying an entire full page, was a public apology letter with a headline written in extra-large black font, "To my sister Maya, a confession from one who failed a true hero. I am Jacob Michael Thompson, class of 2024, graduate of Johns Hopkins Medical School, currently employed at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. During my 7-year journey pursuing my medical dreams, there was one person who sacrificed her youth, her health, and all her own dreams to make my success possible. She used hands scarred from hauling concrete to lift up the surgical instruments I now hold. She used a spine damaged from years of heavy lifting to support the foundation of my medical knowledge. However, due to my arrogance, vanity, and complete moral failure, I deeply wounded and betrayed the person in this world who loved me most. I once felt shame about her manual labor work, even forbidding her from attending my graduation celebration. I was wrong, completely and utterly wrong. Maya is not merely a construction worker. She is a builder, a creator, someone who changes the world with her own hands. She is not just my sister. She is my hero, my savior, my benefactor. She not only deserves to attend any celebration of mine, she deserves the very best respect and honor this world can offer. I publicly admit to all citizens of Chicago, all residents of Illinois, and all Americans, half the credit for my medical degree belongs to Maya Elizabeth Thompson. Every achievement in my medical career has been built upon her sacrifice and dedication. I will spend the remainder of my life repaying this debt and seeking redemption for my sins. I am sorry, Maya. I am not worthy of being your brother, but I hope someday to earn your forgiveness again. I love you, my sister, my hero. I carefully cut out this newspaper article and placed it in an elegant picture frame, then hung it in the most prominent location in my new home's living room. Yes, my new home. I had used the old house as collateral to successfully secure a larger loan for purchasing this superior property. Jake's mandatory monthly payments perfectly covered my new mortgage, and I now had sufficient time and energy to pursue what I truly wanted to do with my life. My back still occasionally ached, and the calluses on my hands hadn't completely disappeared, but I had officially enrolled in Northwestern University's evening architecture program. The dreams I had torn up 7 years ago were now returning to my life. 6 months after that newspaper article was published, something extraordinary happened that I never could have anticipated. I was sitting in my favorite corner booth at Millennium Park Cafe, sketching preliminary designs for my final architecture project, when a well-dressed woman in her 50s approached my table. She had silver-streaked hair pulled back in an elegant chignon and wore a perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit that spoke of both wealth and understated sophistication. "Excuse me," she said with a warm smile. "Are you Maya Thompson?" I looked up from my drawings, immediately on guard. After the very public nature of Jake's confession, I had received my share of both supportive messages and unwanted attention from strangers. "Yes, I am," I replied cautiously. "My name is Margaret Whitfield. I'm the senior partner at Whitfield and Associates Architecture. I read about your story in the Tribune, and I've been hoping to meet you ever since." Whitfield and Associates. Even as a part-time architecture student, I knew that name. They were responsible for designing some of Chicago's most iconic modern buildings, including the award-winning renovation of the historic Palmer House Hotel and the stunning new children's hospital that had been featured in Architectural Digest. "Please, may I sit down?" Margaret asked, gesturing to the empty chair across from me. I nodded, still uncertain about where this conversation was heading. "I want to tell you something," Margaret began as she settled into her seat. 40 years ago, I was a lot like you. I grew up in a working-class family in Detroit. My father was a steel mill worker, and my mother cleaned houses for wealthy families on the north side of town. When I announced that I wanted to be an architect, they told me I was dreaming too big for someone like me. She paused to sip the coffee she had ordered, her eyes growing distant as she recalled those memories. I worked nights at a diner while attending community college during the day. Every penny I earned went toward tuition and books. I wore the same 3 outfits to class for 2 years because I couldn't afford anything else. My professors treated me like I didn't belong there, and my classmates acted as if I were invisible. I found myself leaning forward, drawn into her story despite my initial wariness. "But I had something they didn't understand," Margaret continued, her voice gaining strength. "I had the perspective of someone who understood what buildings really mean to people, not just as aesthetic statements or engineering marvels, but as homes, as sanctuaries, as places where real life happens. That understanding, born from struggle, became my greatest professional asset." She reached into her leather briefcase and pulled out a portfolio folder. "I've been following your work at Northwestern," she said, opening the folder to reveal photographs and documents I didn't recognize. "Your professors speak very highly of your design instincts and your unique approach to problem solving, but more importantly, I've seen some of your preliminary sketches." My eyes widened as I realized she was looking at drawings I had submitted for various class assignments over the past several months. "How did you—" I began. "Professor Williams is an old friend of mine," Margaret explained with a slight smile. "When he showed me your design for affordable housing that incorporated both beauty and functionality for working families, I knew I had to meet you. Your understanding of how to create dignity and hope through architectural design is remarkable." She turned the portfolio toward me, revealing detailed architectural renderings and photographs of completed buildings. "These are projects my firm has completed over the past 5 years," she said. "Community centers in underserved neighborhoods, affordable housing developments that don't look like institutional boxes, medical clinics designed to feel welcoming rather than intimidating. This is the kind of work that changes lives, Maya, and I believe you have the vision and the passion to take this kind of design to the next level." I stared at the images, feeling my heart race as I took in the beautiful, thoughtful buildings that somehow managed to be both architecturally sophisticated and completely accessible to ordinary people. I'm offering you a position at my firm, Margaret said quietly. Not an internship, not an entry-level position. A real job, with real responsibilities and a real salary that would allow you to quit night school and attend the university full-time during the day. We would pay for the remainder of your education, and you would work with our team on projects that matter. I felt tears welling up in my eyes, but for the first time in years, they were tears of hope rather than frustration or anger. Why? I whispered. Why would you take such a chance on someone who hasn't even finished school yet? Margaret reached across the table and gently touched my hand, her fingers briefly tracing over the faint scars that still marked my knuckles. Because 30 years ago, someone took a chance on me when no one else would. An architect named Samuel Chen saw past my background and my lack of connections to recognize something he called authentic vision. He gave me my first real opportunity, and he changed the entire trajectory of my life. She leaned back in her chair, her expression becoming more serious. But there's another reason, Maya. The architectural profession has become too insular, too focused on impressing other architects rather than serving real communities. We need people who understand what it means to struggle, who know the difference between a house and a home, who can design spaces that give dignity to everyone who uses them, regardless of their economic status. Margaret stood up and placed her business card on the table. You don't have to give me an answer today, she said. Take time to think about it. But I want you to know that your story, your background, your experience, these aren't obstacles to overcome. They're qualifications that make you exactly the architect the world needs right now. As she prepared to leave, she turned back one more time. And Maya? Your brother's public apology took courage on his part, but it also revealed something important about you. You didn't destroy his career when you easily could have. You gave him a chance to make things right and become a better person. That kind of strength and wisdom, that's exactly what we need in someone who designs spaces where people will live and work and heal. After Margaret left, I sat alone in the cafe for another 2 hours, staring at her business card and trying to process what had just happened. For 7 years, I had focused entirely on survival, on meeting obligations, on getting through one day at a time. I had never allowed myself to imagine that my experience, my background, my scars could actually be valuable assets rather than shameful secrets to hide. That evening, I called Jake for the first time since that night when I had changed the locks. To my surprise, he answered immediately. Maya! His voice was tentative, almost fearful. I'm calling to tell you something, I said, keeping my tone neutral. Someone offered me a job today, a real career opportunity that could change my entire life. There was a long pause before he responded. That's wonderful, he said quietly. You deserve every good thing that comes your way. I know my words don't mean much after everything I did, but I'm proud of you. I always should have been proud of you. Jake, I said, feeling some of the old warmth creeping back into my voice despite my efforts to remain distant. Are you becoming the kind of doctor you always said you wanted to be? I'm trying, he replied, and I could hear emotion in his voice. Every day, I remember what you sacrificed for me, and I try to be worthy of it. I volunteer at the free clinic downtown twice a week. I'm working with patients who remind me of us, of who we used to be before I forgot where I came from. Good, I said simply. Keep remembering where you came from, Jake. It matters. Maya, he said as I was about to hang up. Do you think, someday, we might be able to have coffee together? As brother and sister, not as debtor and creditor? I looked around my beautiful new home, at the architectural books scattered across my dining table, at the newspaper clipping framed on my wall. Maybe someday, I said. We'll see. The next morning, I called Margaret Whitfield and accepted her offer. My real life wasn't just beginning anymore. It was flourishing, growing, becoming something more beautiful. That's our story for today. We hope you enjoyed this incredible tale. Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Subscribe for more captivating stories like this, and don't forget to like and share this video. Thank you for being here with us. See you next time.